Today we have our student, second year graduate studies. Marko Mrvos, he will introduce shortly himself, and he will also give us a lecture on his experiences on virtual reality, but also on software Blender. So I'm sure it would be very interesting also for the other students to hear his experience. So Marko, I give you a word.
So hello everyone, I hope you can see this presentation. Today I'm going to show you how you can use virtual space as in Blender and in other 3D software, but specifically Blender, and how you can use it as artist medium. First of all, I would like to show you one of my first 3D modeling setup and scenes. This is my room. I was fascinated with other creators and how they would create their room and their space of living. So I created my own. This is like some low poly, stylish cartoon type of scene, which has much simplified object. And also the best thing is that even though if it's simplified with the object, the lighting is real, and that what it's make it alive. Second thing that I would like to show you is this card that I did at the second year of faculty. This was for photography class, and basically I wanted to shoot this car, and so I download this 3D model, which is free on the web, and I could have placed it anywhere. I have created also myself some shooting studios, something like Popsicles, which is like very unique and popular studio in Hollywood. It's been in a lot of different movies like Batman and a lot of different music videos, but finally I decided to put it somewhere that I wouldn't be able to put it, and that is in front of the photography room, which is right this door right here. And so I took a real picture and I merged so this real world with the fake 3D CGI car, and in that process I needed to adjust the space so the car would have as much as real as reflection and lighting and shadows as if it was really there. This is another example of using a software like Blender. So this was in collaboration with the Faculty of Mathematics. One student of theirs had her final work in presenting taxi cab geometry, which is like advanced connecting of two different points on a map within the coordinate system. And basically she would just have these simple tables that would show, and with that program that she worked, she had an option to export it as a 3D model, so I could then import it into my software and have different styles of that 3D object. I could play with shapes and colors and all the other stuff. This is another example. This right here on the right side is illustration for a children's book. This illustration was 3D render, and it was from a object that is shaped like a diamond. So I was really intrigued to see how I could make the light shape and bend in those different surface, and I got this interesting result. Obviously, the bird isn't render with the 3D software. The bird was added later within Photoshop. This is another example of it. So, and because it's actually very difficult to capture in real world stuff like this diamond, because of all the reflection, and you actually for do that to capture a perfect picture without any reflection in real world, you have these matte boxes, but if you don't have it, it's very difficult because diamonds are basically nothing because they are everything that is around them. So I was fascinated to create like this perfect example of how the diamond would look without seeing any lights or camera. Obviously, you can see lightning, but this is what it makes like the diamond, because I need to use an HDR, which is in 3D world like a um, world around your object, but that world is 2D because if this is your object, you would have like sphere of this 360 image degrees of lighting, which is how we see in our real world. And um, that's why in most of the cases when you are doing something that you want to show as real as possible, you would use those HDRIs because this is how we in real world function, because in 3D it's like perfect environments. So if you don't have that, if you have only one point of light or two, it will seem more fake than if it was with this HDRI. This is one other picture. This is from the Department of Informatics. They gathered a large collection of data, which are comments from Twitter, and they actually organized the information by the tweet type and what is was written in them. So uh, they created this Excel table with a lot of different points, and every point was one comment, and they could put it in 3D space. So I got from them these huge Excel tables with, I think, about 50,000 comments, 50,000 tweets, and I um, basically play with them and see how I could uh, make them look interesting and put them in 3D space, and with manipulation of lighting and cameras and colors, I could make something that would look like an art piece. This is another one of my projects, so this would fit into some category of like extending reality. So what you see here is a normal wall, and on that wall I use projector to project the image that I created in this 3D software, and I basically projected from that point. I need to in advance take a picture. That is how I can match the perspective and to get a real sense of depth when you are standing there. So, and also there are also other things that I do on site, which is like masking to make it as seamless as possible, this transition from reality to virtual space, and a lot of different things of setting up projector just right and making sure that it's not bright, uh, it's not as much bright, so you wouldn't see how it projects around it. So but there are topics for another meeting. And this is another one of my project with the same thing with these projectors and with the perspectives in which you can see if you're standing just right. So on this upper right photo, you can actually see how it doesn't look as right as you were standing right close to it. But if you stand in front of it where you should, you can actually get a glimpse of that virtual space. And this was much different from this space, which I like clean and I just put an empty hall. In this, I put all of my different works that I did, and I also animated, but I can show you that in on a real example. So So this would be this hallway in its original state. This is like 3D in the makings of that space, and you can see a lot of different stuff in here. So first of all, you have that space, then you have this, in that space, these coordinates, which if you don't have any object in, it helps you navigate through that space. This is a simplified look of that space, so you don't actually see it of how it would be look. It is going to look like in the finish process, because this way it's much easier for computer to render these graphics. And if we turn on the lights off, because this thing right here, this circle thing, are lights that are projecting and lighting this virtual space. They are not turned on right now, and this is, like I said, the simplified version, but I can turn on these scene lights, in which you can see how are they, how would they look. But this is difference between different render engine. This one is in Eevee, which is like simplified. It's like a game engine that it's allowing you to see the textures and different colors and even this simplified light, but it it's using a shortcut, so it doesn't look as real as it would with Cycles. Cycles is like this advanced type of seeing which uses path tracing, which actually renders every point. But because of that, it's great. It's looking realistic, but unfortunately, it cannot be run in real time. So if I were to use it, you will see how much I need to wait to actually get to result. So this would be like a final version. It would be close to a final version. It's obviously not yet done rendering, but you can see how it all comes to life and how you have these, bright spots and fading to darkness and all of these different things that are lightning. And the thing that it's like most advanced in this recent time in Blender, it's called denoise, which uses like an AI um, to actually clean up the image from the noise. So if I don't turn on the noise, you will see how you have this grain, this noise, which cannot be processed because I actually limit this sample rate, which is like quality of the image, but with the AI and advances in them, you can like get clearer image, but not as precise. So a lot of different things actually happen in here. This right down here is timeline. It's normal timeline, except it doesn't tell you the seconds, but frames. It's much more easier to navigate that way in 3D because 3D is not as fast because of all these different rendering times. So you cannot actually see it most of the time in real time, but you can actually switch it to move to seconds. And so I would now need to switch to this simplified version because you won't be able to see all of these different animation if I use the cycles engine. So if I press play, you can actually see that these lights are flickering, then this juice box comes through the camera, and this right here, this triangle is like my virtual camera that is set up, so I can enter it, and this would be the final product, so the perspective from which will the user see it. And if I turn to that view, you can see that this juice box is like perfectly placed, and it goes back. And actually, if I clicked on it, you could see in this timeline of how I animated it and how this actually properties changes in real time. So you could see here that location and the rotation changes as this object is animated. Also, there are different things. This globe from another project was used, and I actually play with the simulation and shrunk it down and then move back to its original shape. I think we can now go to another example. So this right here is the car on the Academy. You can see here the 3D model of the car which I animated. Again, this is the version that is more reliable, and you can see it in real time, so it's not as realistic. There are also some different modes, like this base mode, which is like used for sculpting, in which you don't actually see even the textures. And there is another really fascinating, which is like wireframe, and you can actually see from which polygons or which faces are these 3D models made of. This would be like a pixel in photography, so you have all these different little points and shape, which actually creates the final 3D image. So this would be like some simplified version of viewing. This is with lights, and in the end you have this like photorealistic with like real light bounces and real reflection from the space that this vehicle is in. And if I now move, you can't actually see the environment because this environment is added in the camera, in virtual camera, and I'm not into it right now. But what you can see from this space is these shadows that are created. This is from the door. Again, this is also this like big rectangular things are the lightning, which I tried to recreate it. So if you want to manipulate with those, you can change the size and the power and the color light and all the different things. So if I now enter the camera, you can actually see of how will the final render would look like. This right here is a background image. So everything that is visible in this view will be above that picture. So it's added these shadows and the shadows from the car on the walls and all these different things. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation and thank you for listening.
I have one question, but that's because I really have no idea. So we talked about virtual reality last time. Even before.
Yes,
we talked about
Diana Protic was talking about her project.
Yes, yes. So in which program is virtual reality made in? Because we never talked about how it's made. I mean, you did mention, but we went quick on time, so I'm more interested in that. And how is it connected somehow to Marko's programs or something?
No, actually, we take photos, like photogrammetry. It is like many small shots of one object, and then Marta Stražičić, who is a programmer, she put that in Unity. So she did this from documentary photos, let's say like that, in this Unity, and she created in Unity program whole virtual space.
But I think partially what Marko was showing in Blender, I think Blender is also for virtual reality. So it's not far from that.
Yeah, I mean, you can create these virtual worlds and objects, and you can just import it in this other software because Blender is for creating this software like Unity and Unreal Engine. They are just for creating a game. They are game engines. So in Blender, you create stuff. And also, I mean, if you are using the photogrammetry, then you create it in photogrammetry, but you want to use some abstract object, you use stuff like Blender or Cinema 4D or any of these creation program, and then you just transfer it to different software. Even though now Blender, I think, has add-ons which you can install it, and you can actually put the headset and go into this Blender VR scene, but it's not looking amazing, it's not realistic, but it's VR and you can immediately go into your scene and see what you're doing.
Okay. Very nice. Very good. I'm very glad that somebody has already some interest. Maybe would be a future collaboration or something like that. And keep in touch. Next week, please come, everybody. We will have very, very interesting German artist, Peter Kess. One can say he is a conceptual artist, but very, very further than that, with very thorough ideas, very funny ideas, but very also sincere inside this kind of playfulness. So please come next Thursday, take part, and he's a very nice person and definitely would also answer your questions. Okay, so thank you and see you next Thursday. Let us know if you want to send messages or whatever. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Okay.